For the third recording, I actually have a new article I wanted to start with. It's an article by Bodenheimer and Kate Lorig, who's really the founder of this particular movement. And this article, if you want to read through it, really talks about the different models of how you manage chronic diseases, because really what we're facing in healthcare right now is just chronic diseases all over the place, where it used to be much more acute situations. And basically, Lorig, if you look in Bodenheimer in Table 1, kind of talk about the two models of self-management and care. There's the traditional model. This is where the doctor is in charge, the healthcare professional. They know everything, you know nothing, and the idea is they'll tell you what to do, you have to comply with it. Behavior change, you don't really want to do things, and you've got to get things done, versus the more collaborative care model, where it's shared discussion and expertise, learning and teaching take place in a participative type of fashion. And the idea is to teach, as it says in Table 1, problem-solving skills. And so now we're really moving into more of a zone with chronic illness. I have asthma, and the idea is it's really up to me to manage my disease. It's not up to the healthcare professional, who I might see a couple of times a year. So when you work with healthcare professionals, it has to be a collaborative idea. If you move down to, Table 2, in Table 2, they talk about what is self-management. In traditional patient education, it's just sharing technical information about products. You're not controlling the disease right. A lot of lecturing is going on. But real self-management is where you give people the skills and the self-efficacy to actually get something done. You're trying to educate the patient on what they can do and be promotive of their problem-solving skills, so that when they're not in your office, they can do things. So that's really the model of self-management that we try to work with. And this article is really groundbreaking in that way. In the rest of the article, they actually talk about asthma, and most asthma studies don't do anything nearly that's considered self-management in the Lorig model. They mostly do the traditional way. There's something called an action plan you're supposed to have, where you're supposed to figure out what meds at what point you're supposed to take, and it's really not done. In diabetes, done very little as well, and even in arthritis, they come to the same conclusion. So that's kind of the first article in that realm. Now I actually wanted to go into the article that most of you said you thought was a better model of things. It was the Bailey article on self-management and asthma. And a lot of you reported that you thought that article was actually a good article and a good approach to self-management, but I would actually probably differ from that idea. And what I would actually go down to is basically the methods on the second page here of what they basically did here in the study. Somewhere in here, here we go. I think it's on the second page. Basically what they say here is they did have a model, but they gave people a workbook, and then in one, it says it on page 2, 1 hour counseling session by somebody who's got a master's degree in public health. They reviewed in 1 hour asthma triggers, barriers to adherence, how to use an inhaler properly, peak flow meters were given. What could you possibly accomplish if you're covering the physiology of asthma, the medications? It had to be 1 hour to cover 7-8 topics. Is that really a good way to do teaching and learning? I would actually argue that isn't. And basically what they found here is that the approach didn't work at all. Now, sure, they had the support groups after that some people took part in, but they basically found that there was really no results to this particular study. And that's because having one session where you cover 8 topics in an hour and then a few support group meetings is really not going to do very much. And that's exactly what they found. Now, of course, I'm partial to this once again, because what I decided to do was my own research on things. And let's see if I have this for you. I published something in the Journal of Allergy and Asthma educators. And the approach that I took, and I was mentored by somebody who was very knowledgeable. His name was Howie Zeitz. Really knew a lot about teaching and learning. So let me share a little more with you what we did. If you go down to the method section, basically at each session we brought people in and we tried to make, we had individual status reports. We would spend 5 to 10 minutes going around the group of 7 to 8 people. How you doing? How is your asthma? Have you had any problems this week? What problems have you had? Focus on what medicines they were taking and really build a good social support group that was really based on education. And then we'd pick a topic. We'd talk about medications, controlling asthma, and we'd spend a lot of time talking about that. And then we would give people homework, kind of like Weight Watchers homework, where we'd have them monitor what they were doing. Were they out exercising for 20 minutes cutting the grass? You get a point for every 5 minutes you were doing that. But if you wore a mask while you were doing that, you double your points. And we tried to have people wash their hands, exercise, take their asthma meds, and once a week they would come back and they would say, how many points did you get? What did you do? And what was going on? So we had a good educational discussion. And once again, the whole idea here is to find out what people are doing, what they know, what their schemas are, and then try to scaffold their knowledge up to the next level. So we would do this once a week. We'd do a lot of laughing. We'd have a lot of fun doing it. They would learn a lot once a week for 8 weeks. And we found, if you look at the article, significant results for patient activation. People were getting activated in terms of what they were doing. Quality of life went up if you look at the results. They knew more at the end of the study as far as knowledge. Everything was better. And so I find that the best way to get something done in health psychology is where you use this kind of educational approach that works with a social support group. It wasn't just social support. It was really focused on asthma, teaching and learning. I have the disease. My guests who would come in knew about the disease, and so we'd listen to people helping each other out, peer support, peer learning, knowledge schemas, and scaffolding people's knowledge up. And at the end of the study, we found significant improvements, and actually even 3 months later, the same kind of thing. So that is the idea behind the approach we used, and we like to think that that's the right way to do things. So as you think about health psychology and whatever realm you're in, small groups I find are really wonderful elements. We did things a little different than Lorig, where it was really based on one disease state. I know a lot about asthma. The guests I had come in knew a lot, but we would want the participants to do a lot of the talking so we could find out what their schemas were and what we could teach them so it would be useful for them. And then they would come back once a week, just like Weight Watchers, and tell us what they did and what they had problems with. And our job was to help them help themselves, so they actually had increased self-efficacy at the end of the program. So hopefully this is good and knowledgeable for you. Summarize the key points I've made here. You'll basically have 2 weeks to do this, and hopefully you enjoyed learning about this and it makes good sense to you. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.